another thing we're going to look at now is how to move. So we're going to be exploring some tools in Maya now that will help you to get around. Of course, the first one or the most important one is your movement tools, right? So you have an object, you want to move it around, right? You want to move it from one point to another. If you go to modify, you can see you have your transformation tools. If you see your transformation tools, you have your move tool, your rotate tool, and your scale tool. Now, if I click on move, see what happens. Notice that this is called a gimbal, right? You see that there's an element that appears at the center that has different arrows pointing at different directions. That's your gimbal. Now, I can click on one of the arrows. Once I click and drag, my object goes in the direction of that arrow, right? So I'm dragging it to the right now, right? I can also drag it to the other direction. I can take it up and I can take it down. And because this is a 3D space, I can also move it in and out. Also remembering that I can also rotate my camera. You select your modify transformation tools and you move. You can also rotate. If I click on rotate, notice that the gimbal changes. And now I can rotate this particular item whichever way I want it to rotate. You can also, I'm sure you saw that as well, scale. So this has to do with increasing the size of your object, right? So this is how you scale. So let me quickly take that again. If I select my move, I can move to whichever direction I want to go, right? So this is your translation tool in Maya, right? So I'm moving from one direction to another. I can select my rotate as well, and I'm rotating, and then I can select my scale, right? So you can also find these move tools if you look at the left of the screen, you have your tool tray here. So what you have here is your most your most common tool that you're using. So you have your select tool. This tool is what allows you to select. Let me create something else that I can compare. This tool allows you to select your object. So once I click on the selection tool, I can select one object and select the next. You also have your lasso select. These are also if you've used them Photoshop before, you might be familiar with some of these modes of selection. But coming down here, I can also see the move tool here. I can also see the rotate tool. I can also see the scale tool. So you don't need to go to transformation tools. You don't need to access it through here. You can also access it through the menu tray. So see, if I click, it's the same thing, right? If I click on this, you can hover over it and you can see, can give you more information, right? So it's also important to note that in Maya, there are different ways to do the same thing, right? It's very important to know that. So first of all, I went through the menu at the top, went through the transformation tools. Now I am going through the menu tray on the right. Now I'm going to show you something else. If I hover over this, you can see that there's a bit of a tooltip. So as you're learning, you can use this to help yourself. So you have the title, have a brief explanation of what the tool does, and you have something very important. I have a shortcut there. You see that there is a shortcut that says for the move tool, it says W. So that means that whenever I hit the W key, I should be on the move tool. So if I select the rotate tool, it gives you another tooltip that explains what the rotate tool does and the shortcut for that. So as you start using Maya, these shortcuts, they come in handy a lot, right? I mean, personally, I don't remember the last time I went through the modify, menu to move, an object. All you have to do is to press W. So you see that I just press W, select this. It's on move now. If I want to rotate, I'll press the E key and I'm on the rotate, and I press the arrow key and I'm on the rotate as well. So a lot of the tools we're going to be exploring, they will have their own shortcuts. Now, I can't go through all of them, but as you start working and you start finding the tools that that you use quite often, it might be of help for you to go through and look at the menu and look at the shortcuts. So for example, I'm at the edit mesh menu. You can see that bevel has a shortcut called Ctrl B, extrude has Ctrl E. So some of these menu items, they have shortcuts that come in handy, especially when you start working on a lot of items and you might not have time to be going through every menu item to look for what the tool you're looking for. The shortcuts are very important. Another example is, everybody knows about this. There is a delete key, right? So I can decide to click on the delete key. So I'm on the edit menu. On the edit menu, I can decide to click this and it will delete. But why do that? You just simply need to hit your delete key and you delete your item. So that is very important to note. Very important to note that there is more than one way of doing this, of accessing the same tool in Maya, and there are also shortcuts that help you, as you improve in your use of Maya. Those shortcuts come in handy.
Hi guys, if you're enjoying this video, don't forget to like and subscribe for more of this.
Yeah. All right. So another thing we have here, going down the menu, we have these are called shelves in Maya. You're basically still following the same idea. What you're accessing here can be accessed at the top of at the topmost menu, but this is more like, again, shortcuts, basically way to access the same thing. So as for example, I'm on modeling here, so I can decide to, I showed us how to create a cube originally by going to create and creating a cube, but I can also decide to just come here and click. Again, let me just hover. It's always important when you're using Maya for the first time to always hover on it to find out what it does. So I click on polygon cube, it creates a polygon cube for me. So same thing I did before, just in a different way. So whichever might be more convenient for you, whichever you prefer doing, try that out. I click on polygon cylinder, create a polygon cylinder. I click on that, it creates that cylinder for me. So what you have here is called shelves in Maya. So shelves are grouped on, again, based on what you're working on. So you have a sculpting shelf. So if you want to sculpt, if you created a mesh or a model and you want to apply sculpting features to it, you can come here and you have a plethora of sculpting tools that you can use. If you're rigging, you can come here and have a plethora of rigging tools. So this is the same thing as coming to the menu set and selecting rigging and accessing everything that has to do with rigging, right? So I can come here, select my joint, select everything I want to select. Same thing for animation. You have your animation menu shelf, right? So as you start working, you start, the menu shelf that you use quite often, and you can just, access your tools from there. You can also create custom menu shelves. So you can select, the custom menu shelf, and you can add, menus, right? You can add let's say, for example, there's a particular tool you use a lot, right? You use a particular tool a lot, and you don't always want to, let's say, for instance, let me show another tool. For instance, let me show let's say create polygon tool, for instance. This allows you to create your own polygon, right? Again, don't need to bother about this. We'll get to all this in due time, right? So let's say this is a tool I use a lot, create polygon tool, and I'm always using the create polygon tool, right? You can imagine how it's going to be a lot of work and even tedious to always come here and scroll down to create, to select this, right? I want to be able to access it like this, right, at the snap of my finger. So what you can do is, I can look for that tool and do Ctrl Shift and click on create polygon tool, right? Now see what happened. I'm going to do it again. It has happened, but I'm going to do it so in case you didn't catch that. So if I Ctrl Shift click on create polygon tool, it gets added to my custom shelf. So this time, whenever I want to access this particular tool, all I have to do is click on this here and I can access that. So that is how that works. So you can see how Maya can be customizable. That's one interesting thing about the software. It's not opinionated on how it's built, right? You can come in and customize it to suit however you want to use it. I showed you the top side of the screen. I've showed you the left side of the screen. Now we come over to the right side. We see a lot of other stuff that might be confusing, but let's just take a look at it one by one. You have at the top most, you have the channel box. Then after that, you have your attribute editor, and then you have your modeling toolkit. I mean, modeling toolkit was added on the later versions of Maya. It's just basically very similar to what we have on, your modeling menu set. But we're going to focus on the channel box and the attribute editor. So you have if you look at my screen, you have a number of objects, right? Now you click on one object to select it, because when I click, you notice that there's a green highlight that shows you that that object has been selected. So I am on this now. Now if I click on the channel box, I'm on the cylinder now. If I click on the channel box, you notice that there's a bunch of information on channel box. Now notice when I click on the sphere, there's a change. Now, for instance, let's look at this. What we see, P cube 1. Now if I click on the cylinder, you notice it changes to P cylinder 1. So this is for those that have used maybe Photoshop or something similar like that, this is similar to your layers, right? This is where you have information about your object about the objects in your scene, right? So I click on this, see P sphere 1. See, you have the name, and then you have information about where this object is in space, right? Space being your viewport. You have information about the exact point it is on your viewport. So you have your translate X information, your translate Y information, translate Z, have your rotate X, rotate Y, rotate Z, scale Y, scale X, and scale. So it's giving you information about where these items are located. Notice that whenever I click it, those stats update depending on where you are. So I'm on P cube 1 now. So this is the default name that Maya gives your object. So I can select the P cube 1, click on it, and see what happens. I can rename it. I can call it my cube. This is very important, especially when you start working with a lot of props in Maya. It's very important to go in and name your object. So this is where you can do that. Also notice something else. I've showed us about how to move items in Maya. I'm going to do that again. I just hit the W key to move. Now notice when I'm moving, see what's happening. See that the channel box is updating. So as I move my item, or as I manipulate it, generally, the information is updated. So what your channel box does, it gives you all the information you need about your object, about your mesh, right? And that information updates in real time as you manipulate your mesh. So that's basically what the channel box is. Again, I can also come to the channel box, middle mouse click and drag, and I can move my item. This is like the fourth way of moving items in Maya that I've showed us so far, right? So this is another way to move items. So everything I did, with the gimbal, I can also do with the channel box. So look at, I'm rotating. I can shift click to select more than one, channel, and I'm rotating that, right? I can do the same thing to scale, right? So you can also, if you prefer, move, your items using the channel box. So that's mostly what the channel box is for. Next is the attribute editor. The attribute editor tells you about the attributes of your mesh, right? Of your selected mesh, more importantly. So there are a lot of sections here, but I'll just go down. But it gives you We'll go into more detail about this when we start talking about texture and all, but this is the shading information, the default shading information of your object. So you can add more shaders, you can add more textures. When you do that, it appears here. You can also see that all the actions I've done on a particular mesh. It appears here. You can see the poly split ring. This, because I used the insert edge loop tool on this particular sphere. This information is here to represent that. So every single action you perform on Maya is archived in Maya. So it's saved. It's called a history, right? So if I go back to the channel box, you can also see that as well. There's a poly split ring. This was the operations I performed on this particular mesh. Of course, you can delete. There's something called delete history in Maya, because over time, as you keep working, this store of information, it keeps getting large, and it may slow down your system depending on the size of what you're working on. So it's always important to come in and delete by type and select history. So that deletes every work you've done on this, and kind of just leaves the mesh in the current state it is as the default state, so with no history recorded anymore. And then you can, of course, once you start working on it again, it starts storing the history. So that's that for the attribute editor. You use the attribute editor a lot when you start adding textures, when you start adding colors to your meshes. You can come in here, add a new material. For instance, you can decide to add a new surface to your material. You can change the color of your material, right? So once I click on that, I can change the color of my material. So yeah, so what I just did now, if you saw that, was the final menu that I've not looked at is the menu that is inside the viewport, right? So we are inside the viewport now. See that there are some menus here, right? So these menus show you, it deals with what exactly is in your viewport. Now in mode called wireframe mode, where you can just see basically the skeleton of your objects, right? And then you also have shaded mode, right? This is your shaded mode, where this is what we are working with. Then you also have your textured mode that comes in when you start working with textures as well. So that's also very important. Have a shortcut for that as well. So you press 4, you're in your wireframe mode. You press 5, you're in your shaded mode, and you press 6, you're in your textured mode. So that's also very important. Everything here has to do with your camera, your view camera. I showed us how to frame selection earlier, so you can also do that from here. You can click on F on frame selection, same thing as clicking F. You can frame all as well, same thing as clicking A, and a lot of other attributes. I can decide to lock my camera. So if I click on lock camera, for instance, I can't move, can't navigate anymore. So again, just to point out, the menus here have to do with the viewport, the current viewport you are working on. So you have for shading, have different, same thing we saw under, have the wireframe mode. You can press 4, you can see that it says 4 there. So if I click on that, same thing. If I click on the next one, you have smooth shade all. If I click on the next one, smooth shade selected items. So I can select a particular item and say, I want this to be smooth shade. So it smooth shades that particular item, and the rest of them are in wireframe. I can smooth shade all, can flat shade all. So, I mean, once you get your hands on the software, it's also do you a lot of good. So actually go in and just, try these things, just play around with them. Don't be afraid of the software. Just find out what this button does, what this does. It will help you to get a long way in actually helping you get better. Then you have your lighting. This has to do with adding lighting to your scene. When we start talking about lighting, and rendering, we'll play with this a lot. Then it has to do with showing objects on your scene, right? So once you can click on any of these items, and you can hide those items from your viewport. So currently what we have on our viewport is polygons, basically only polygons. So if I select on polygons, see, it hides all the polygons in my scene. So this is another way to hide items from your scene. I've showed us that, right? So we also have, finally, if you look here, you see the outliner. This outliner, just like the channel box, gives you information about all the items that you have on your viewport. Notice that I renamed my cube to my cube. You can see that there is a swatch here called my cube. If I click on my cube, it selects it. If I click on P cylinder, it selects it. If I click on P sphere 1, it selects it. So just another way of visualizing, what you have on your scene. That is what the outliner is for. It's also a very important tool that you will use a lot, as well as you start working with Maya. You can select it. You can also rename from here, just as you can rename from the channel box as well. You can call this my sphere. All right. So I can select from here as well. My sphere. You can select from here. You can click on this and it selects. I can click on this and it selects. Right. I can view information about my object. You can view the name. You can view it from the channel box. So that's about the outliner. And finally, at the bottom left, you have your animation controls. You have you can see a little play button here that looks like a video player, right? If you click on it, notice that the animation, the play is moving, right? I can stop it. I can click on next. So this becomes, important once you start animating. You'll be using this a lot, right? So this will be the focus of animator for those that will be animating in Maya. So if you followed me from the start, the takeaway, or what you must have noticed, is the fact that there is a lot of way to do things in Maya. We can be doing the same thing and we would be going about it in different approaches, and they are both right. Like, there's no wrong way, there's no right way, right? So the software is flexible like that, where two different people can do the same thing and achieve the same result, but using two different routes. So that is one thing that is big about Maya. So you can see someone using a particular tool, and you might not be using that particular tool, right? And you're still achieving the same results, right? So they go back to the first thing I said. You don't need to know everything. In fact, that is the important takeaway from this lecture. You don't need to know everything. You don't need to know what every single tool does. The best animators, the best modelers, they don't know everything. They are not Maya experts, right? They are good at what they do, and they use Maya to achieve what they do, right? So Maya is like a toolbox. Imagine you have a toolbox in your house, right? The toolbox has a lot of tools. You might have a spanner, you might have a wrench, you might have a plier. Now, depending on what your needs are, you will not use every tool in that toolbox. Maybe you need to hammer a nail. You go, you just pick the hammer, you use the hammer, you put it back in your toolbox. You need the hammer again, you use the hammer. If the hammer is all you use in your toolbox, and if it helps you meet your needs, achieve your goals, then fine. You have the toolbox, but you don't need to use everything in the toolbox. It's a very important thing to be aware of, right? So what are your needs? Are you an animator? Then just focus on learning, the animation tools. Are you a modeler? Are you a technical, are you a rigger? You just know what the tools that meet your needs are, and you use it and you master it. A lot of trepidation and fear when using the software is because of most people feel like they need to master everything, but that's not what it is. Just know what you're doing, go into the software, find out the tools that best suit you, master them, and over time, if you need to learn more, you can now, explore and also learn more tools, right? Final thing I'll say is that practice is what makes perfect. That sounds cliche, but that is the truth, right? I can keep showing you what all the tools do, what each and every single, item, what it does. But if you don't go in and start practicing with it, start playing with it, right? You will never learn. You will never be confident. So you have to also get in, and don't be afraid to break things. Don't be afraid to try things. That is actually how you get comfortable with the tool. So that's it for this course. We learned how to, navigate, the Maya interface. We learned how to, move our camera around. We learned how to zoom. We learned how to rotate. We learned how to move items. We learned how to select items. We kind of went through a, cursory glance at all the menus and what they do. We also learned about the channel box and the attributes editor. So spend time, go through the software on your own, and trust me, practice will make perfect.
Hi guys, it's me again. If you're enjoying this and you'd love to learn more, make sure to visit our website to get more of this program tailored for you. And do not forget to like and subscribe to our channel.